Britney Spears, who I've always been a huge fan of, happened to when she had a bit of a mental breakdown.
When she shaved her head?
When she shaved her head.
Yes.
So right in all the pictures, as she's going to shave her head, she's wearing one of my headbands.
Natalie Portman, was that like an accidental, or did you not product placement?
No, this is pre-product placement. Pre-influencer. She was walking with Jake Gyllenhaal, and they photographed them together, and I'm like, oh my God, that's my headband.
That is beyond cool.
My director of operations, she called me and she's like, are you looking at the numbers? And I'm like, what? She's like, it is insane. And I looked and I was like, oh my God, we're sold out. In that moment, I realized everyone is at home. Everyone is just wants some comfort, and this is our time.
Hi everyone, welcome back to The Laura Show. It might not look familiar, but it's still the same show. We just happen to have an incredible new set that my team helped me come up with. I got bits and pieces from the old set, I got bits and pieces from my home, and so it's a very eclectic feel, and each little thing here represents something about me, and so I hope you guys enjoy it. It's a little bit more colorful, a little bit more different. And we just wanted to continue to bring a space that allowed our amazing guests to come on and share their fantastic stories. Today, I have an amazing guest, Jaimie Harris from This Is Jay, which is a pajama company. And Jaimie, I don't know if you know, I actually tried to come up with an outfit that was appropriate for the office, but in keeping with the theme of the PJ. So I got my stripes on and everything, and I wanted to obviously give you a platform to talk about what you do, so thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I can't even remember for the life of me, because I think we've started talking in 2023 about having you come on. So I don't even know how you came into my world, whether it was a magazine article, a friend, a reference. But regardless, I do remember the moment thinking, oh, this person would be fantastic for my show, because you've been up to a lot in 20-something short years. How long have you?
20 years.
20?
20 years.
20 years on the dot. You started This Is Jay back when you were how old?
In my early 20s.
Early 20s.
In my early 20s, yeah.
That's amazing. Most people in their early 20s are just trying to find themselves and figure it all out. I certainly was when I was 21, 22. I went to school for nutrition. I'm now a real estate agent. So having done nothing of what I went to school for, you on the other hand, you actually went to school, I believe, for design. Is that correct? Or
I actually have a degree in Canadian history.
Oh.
Which was just, I think it's just being, out of high school, some people know what they want to do, and I wasn't sure. I knew I was creative. I knew I liked working with my hands, but I also knew I wanted to get a BA, or more, my parents really pushed me to get a BA while I was figuring things out.
Yeah.
And so I went to school in Halifax. I got my BA in Canadian history.
Are you from Halifax?
No,
or
I'm from
just
Toronto.
Went to Dalhousie? Okay.
No, I went to Dalhousie. Amazing experience.
Yes,
loved.
it's an amazing town.
Yes, loved living out there. And when I was there, my roommate had a sewing machine, and I sewed a headband to keep my hair out of my face.
Out of curiosity, roommate has I don't know a lot of people nowadays that just have sewing machines, especially bringing them to university. Was she a sewer a lot, I guess?
She's still one of my best friends, an amazingly creative person. She's had multiple different artistic careers. She was a shoe designer at one point. Now she's an interior designer, and she just got into it. She didn't really know how to sew, so I think she had asked for it maybe as a gift. It was either a gift from her grandmother or her parents, and so she started tinkering around with it, and I knew how to use it from home ec, which I don't even know if they...
Home ec?
I don't know if they teach home ec anymore.
I did home ec, but did I learn how to sew? I don't know.
You did.
I maybe did. I feel like I did a stuffed animal, and that was the extent of my sewing.
Yes, exactly. So that all came back to me, and I tinkered around with it. She was making really cool recycled clothing, cutting up stuff and repurposing it, and I just sewed a headband to keep my hair out of my face during exams. And
I read this on a couple things.
Yeah.
That you've said this. So obviously this is the story, because it if you look you up online, that's how this company started, with a headband. And I was actually talking offline today with my girl Tilly, who works for us, and we were talking about headbands. She was mentioning the bra strap headband, for example. That was super in style, I think, when I was in university, which would have been in and around the same time. Why not just go buy a headband out of curiosity? I went out and bought headbands. I would have never thought, let me make one.
I think it's just like the maker in me. Like I've always
Okay.
been crafty. I've always liked making things, and it was exam time, and my hair was in my face, and I was never really into the bra strap headband type of thing. Never
That's
looked
probably
good
for
on
the
me.
best. It didn't really look good on anyone.
On anyone, no. So I didn't. I made it. I wore it. I didn't think
Did
much
you go
about
out buy
it.
fabric for it, or like
I
scraps
did.
of? Okay.
I did. I think I went to Fabric Land. I bought a little bit of fabric. Like I was into the idea. Or maybe the first one I made, I used an old T-shirt. I don't even remember. But I was wearing it a few days later, and a store owner asked me where I got my headband. I'm like, I made it. She said, do you sell them? And I'm like, why, yes, I do. It was just this moment of like, oh, sure, I could do this.
Yes, I do.
I
Most
don't
people would be
know.
like, no, I just made it for myself. But you were already like, eye on the prize here. Like, this is an opportunity.
I'm more of I like the challenge. I'm a creator. Like, I like creating ideas from scratch. And I like that challenge. And so the idea of like, okay, what can I do with this? And then figuring it out.
Out of curiosity, what did the first headband look like? Like, what was the style of, like, I assumed like a fat one?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was probably
Exciting print?
No, it was solid, 2.5 inches. I think that day I might have been wearing a striped one.
Okay.
Maybe had bought some
'cause
fabric.
what would she have been like, oh, that's an interesting headband? I'm just curious.
I just think it was before you could walk into Shoppers Drug Mart and get a headband. It was like, it just, you could buy the bra strap ones, you
Yes.
could buy the claw ones.
Yes.
But you,
The claw one like this that Alex is wearing?
yes,
See,
exactly.
Yeah, I know. I used to wear those too.
It's all
amazing.
coming
all
back.
These things come back.
Yeah.
We're that age now.
Exactly.
Where like the kids are
Yeah.
now wearing. I'm like, we discovered those. Okay, so just something interesting. She said yes. So then what happened? You went home and thought,
I'm like, I
so
need
creative.
a logo, I need a tag, like what am I doing? And this is pre-internet. Like this is pre-Googling something. I mean, the internet existed, but you didn't go Google things and find the answer. So it was really just about figuring it out. And I went to Fabricland, I bought some fabric, I tried different widths, different fabrics, made a little tag with a J on the back of it,
okay,
and went back.
for your name, obviously.
That seemed the simplest, in my young
Hey, you're
20
talking to a
mind.
girl whose podcast name is The Laura Show, so, you
It
got to
made
start
sense.
somewhere.
It made sense. And so I went back and I said, here are the headbands. And she placed like $1,000 or $2,000 order. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to turn this into
$2,000 order. How many headbands would that have been?
Oh my God. I think I was probably selling them wholesale for $10.
Okay.
Or $8 at the time.
How much did it cost out of curiosity to make one of those?
Well, at that time when you start out, I wasn't looking at my time. I was just looking at fabric costs.
Yes.
So my margins were not accurate.
Okay, gotcha.
It wasn't like I was in business school. I had a degree in history. So I wasn't approaching it from the very beginning as a business. That came later when I saw the opportunity to actually turn it into a bigger business.
So someone likes your headband. You go home, you create a whole bunch of headbands, and you get a $2,000 order right off the bat. What were you feeling inside? Like, was this this is a great side hustle, or I can make some money to supplement, some of my school expenses? Or were you like, this is it, I'm going all in, this is my business?
Definitely wasn't all in.
Yeah,
It
okay.
was towards the end of my last year of university. So I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't sure if I was going to go to grad school.
I find with some creative people, certainly not all, but some creative people I know, that, they have these great ideas and they can execute on the art, right? The creative part of what they do. But the business component is difficult for them, like walking into a store and asking for someone's business or selling something to someone on the street. Was that difficult for you, or was that relatively easy?
I think I was young enough.
And you weren't self-conscious?
I was young enough and inexperienced enough that I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared. I think and I talk about this a lot with other founders and entrepreneurs who are around the same age as me. With the expansion of the internet, you can learn anything. You can Google anything and learn anything and have access to pretty much anything now, which is a total superpower. back then, it's like you wanted to find a manufacturer, you used the yellow pages, or you drove around districts of the city that housed, like warehouses that housed manufacturing, and you looked for a sign that seemed, to fall in line with what you wanted to do, and you'd walk in to talk to them. So it was a different type of exciting time because you had to like put that effort forward and figure it out on your own.
Right, that's kind of part of the story where nowadays, if you want to open up a sweatshirt line, for example, you couple clicks and there you go, right? So you actually had to use these skills, and I think unfortunately those skill sets, people are losing a little bit over time, that ability to go up to people and have conversations and say, look, this is what I'm trying to do, and sell a vision, right? I think not everyone, certainly, I'm not going to group everyone in that bucket, but we all think like a couple clicks and you're going to be some online huge success. Exactly. Where you were just like bootstraps, like, let me go door knocking, like place to place and figure it all out.
But I think I think now the difference is that people feel like they have to launch and be fully polished when they launch. And that's what I hear from a lot of people who call and say, hey, can I pick your brain? I'm starting a business. Mm-hmm. They feel like they don't want to launch or start until they have all their line sheets, they have their website done, they have their products, they've had some, have some PR.
But how are they going to get any of those things without a business?
Yeah.
So it's like cart before the horse a little bit. Do you think that's fear? People now just thinking like they need to be perfect, where maybe back in the day people didn't have that kind of weight? Or is it just...
I think it's so many eyeballs. No, I think it's so many eyeballs on you. What I was doing in Halifax, I left it in Halifax. There was no one to judge me or remember what I did or didn't do. And so I could experiment without like this fear of doing something wrong. I hear from a lot of people now, and I can understand it. It's like what you put out there is cached. It exists online, and people are seeing what you do. And I'm guilty of it too. When we're doing photo shoots, we're creating video, I've got a certain level of expectation of what I want it to look like. And often people that I work with will say, it's great, and you're standing in your own way. Like there's so much content out there now, and it's moving at such a fast pace that you almost don't have time to perfect everything. You need to sort of create it and put it out there and see the reaction. And it's the same with starting a business. It's like if you have an idea, invest some time and money, but like don't feel like you need to invest all the time and all the money to have a huge, perfect idea before you launch.
Yes, I started a company I'm going to say 2 years ago, but really 5 months ago. And I say that because it kind of like you test the waters, you sort of see, like, is this something that people are interested in? Does this provide people with value? Mm-hmm. And then if you start to get some traction, you go, okay, maybe there is a business here. So that's why I say, when people say, well, when did you start your business? I'm like, well, formally or informally? Because I too tested the waters first, and we had nothing perfect at the start. And
Can I ask what it is?
Oh, yeah. It's a training company for real estate agents. Okay. So we offer a service for other real estate agents and mortgage brokers. Mm-hmm. At first, we were providing media services because that's what we were hearing from the market, that people wanted help with their content. What we then discovered along the way was it's one thing to do content, but if you don't have a database to send it to you, you don't have a following, it's kind of going to fall on deaf ears. Yeah. So then we realized there's actually a big training component just to even set people up correctly to even have their content worthwhile, right? So to get a CRM and to house information somewhere and to provide value via emails. Do you even call your database? Like all these things that people aren't necessarily doing. And I'm like, yeah, you can start a podcast, but if you can't get people to listen to the podcast, what's the point? Yeah. And so we kind of learned that over time, and now it's become more of a training company, and we don't even provide the media services anymore, right? So you pivot along the way, which I'm sure you have, because you eventually then went into the pajamas. But I want to just ask quickly before we kind of go down to when it all really started. Okay, so you have some success in the summers, and I think I read that you were doing like some pop-up stores at the distillery district. Yep. Right, so you kind of got bigger and bigger as you went along. At some point, you must have thought to yourself, I think I got something. No? Or do you still not even have that feeling?
Sometimes. It ebbs and flows. The headbands were really popular for a long time, and it was like people were buying hundreds, thousands of headbands. We were doing wholesale shows in the US, selling headbands to, Fred Siegel and these big stores in LA, and, celebrities like Natalie Portman was photographed wearing one of my headbands on the cover of a magazine. And so at the time I kept saying to myself, like, can I make a career out of headbands? And I knew I couldn't.
And like, how many headbands can one? Maybe is it because headbands are kind of like the accessories? So you have to change it with the outfit, so like people want to buy more than one. Like, what do you think kind of is the allure there? Because like I use headbands mostly for washing my face.
Yeah.
When I think of a headband, right?
Yeah.
Not so much as a fashion piece, but that's because I have flat hair already. I don't need to add. But like some people, you know, it really is their daily accessory, right?
Yeah.
That they change.
I think it's, I always say it's function, right? That's why people like headbands. It keeps your hair out of your face. But we weren't selling direct to consumer at the time. Besides like these distillery shows, we were selling to stores. So a store would place a $5,000 order because maybe they had 3 locations, and we developed like a headband stand and packaging. So we did like a full component. Like for $500, you could get this. For $1,000, you could get an even bigger display. And so at that time, and we're talking like 5 years in, or maybe 3.
You say we. Sorry, who's we?
I
Like
speak,
when did you bring on people? Or when you say we, you just mean this is Jay.
Yeah, like I speak in we's because, you know, you work with so many people, whether it's photographers, videographers, like your team behind the camera here, you know, people who help me print my fabric. Like, it's never just me. And yes, like I might be overseeing it all. It might be my creative direction and my, you know, my baby, but I just have always felt weird saying I.
I love that. That's actually really important. And nowadays, even more than ever, to thank. There's so many people that go into
so much
everything. But even, you know, obviously we have people in the room with us right now, so that's people that you can see. But to your point, like, you know, the manufacturers, the people who created the logo for you, like, you know, going back and forth, the people that probably don't even remember that you worked with because you used like, well, nowadays you could use a Fiverr, but like all these people were part of the story and part of the process, right? So I love that you remember to go back. Okay, so we you know, you started selling to these stores and your displays and things like that, and it's growing. Natalie Portman, was that like an accidental, or did you not product placement? Like,
no, this is pre-product placement, pre-influencer. My sister was on a plane with her, flying. I think it was like Porter, flying Toronto to New York, and she had just filmed V for Vendetta. She was growing out her hair after she had shaved her head, and my sister ran up to her and she's like, my sister makes headbands. She designs and prints the fabric. They're super cute. I know you're growing your hair out. I have one in my purse. I promise you I haven't worn it. It's fresh. I just wanted to give it to you. I think you'll enjoy it. And she took it, and then my sister called me, and she's an investment banker. She's more proper than I am, doesn't talk with her hands the way that I do. And she was like, you're not going to believe what I just did. And we sort of laughed about it. And then a few weeks later, she was like photographed.
I can't believe she was photographed though, because it's one thing if she actually wore it, but like no one saw her wear it, or no one took a picture.
Which is usually what happens. Yeah. And so we were in shock. It was on the cover of In Touch or Us Weekly.
Oh, yeah.
She was walking with Jake Gyllenhaal, and they photographed them together, and I'm like, oh my God, that's my headband.
That is beyond cool. Obviously, it wasn't about the headband. Like, it's not like they're like, headband by Jay at the time.
Well,
but you knew.
I knew,
yes.
But it was a different time. So now you'd be able to promote that on social media right away. Back then, you would reach out to an editor at In Touch or Us Weekly, or work with a PR person to put out a press release to say, hey, this headband worn by Natalie Portman is by this company, and then hopefully they'd pick you up for a smaller story, which they did. There was a lot of smaller stories about Hollywood's favorite headband, because at that point we had started going to LA for meetings, and we were doing they're not considered cool to do anymore by a long shot, but there used to be these like you'd go to LA, you'd set up, and all these celebrities would come visit to check out your stuff, and you'd give away free products.
Oh, okay.
And you'd take pictures with them.
Right.
And it was interesting and new and different at the time, and then it got to a point where people were just like, why are celebrities getting this free stuff? Like this, it feels very weird, and I think the celebrities maybe started to feel a bit weird taking the free stuff so that
now they just do it online.
Right,
course,
well they do it online, but I think it was like the quality of celebrities that started showing up at these things a few years later. You were getting not so many known names, but when it first started, it was like, you know, I met Jessica Alba, like she was at one, and met like Avril Lavigne I met.
Oh,
like
wow.
It was just some really interesting people, and it was a great way to just get our product into a different market. And around that time, we also started just sending headbands to publicists and hoping that they'd share it with their clients. And Britney Spears, who I've always been a huge fan of, happened to when she had a bit of a mental breakdown.
She shaved
When she shaved her head.
Yes.
So right in all the pictures as she's going to shave her head, she's wearing one of my headbands. And
you mean like that famous photo where she's like
photos of the hours leading up. So she, I think, first jumped in the ocean, took her clothes off, and was in broad underwear.
This photo and put this on this. We need to find this. That is so cool.
The interesting thing.
I mean, not for her what she was going through at the time, but
well, this was the interesting thing at the time. So the publicist I was working with said, okay, like we're going to start saying like Britney Spears loves This Is J headbands. And I said, I don't think we can do that. Like she's obviously struggling right now. She's going through a mental health crisis. I probably didn't say it like that because I don't think that was the terminology we used then. But I'm like, she's obviously struggling and going through a hard time. Like, it just doesn't feel right to be pitching stories.
And you're like, what, 27 at this time?
Yeah,
That's
around
pretty mature
that.
thought process, because I'm sure a lot of people would have been like, this is our chance. This is the moment.
I felt weird. I felt like it didn't represent my company well because I didn't want to, capitalize off of someone's pain. And so that was one that we never really marketed that much. We talk about it, but I never went out to try and capitalize off of it because it felt weird to have those pictures being like, check out this cool headband as she's obviously in distress.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting one.
But it's kind of cool because now she's like cool. Like, I think she's good.
Because she's come out
well,
on the other
okay.
side. So,
Anyways,
yeah.
I love you, Britney. Forever the snake photo in my head. Okay. When did we change the name to This Is J? When did we add that?
That was early on. So,
okay. And why?
I don't know. J, just the letter J felt hard to trademark. It felt hard to trademark, and I guess when I came home from Halifax, I'm like, what am I doing? And when I decided I wanted to turn it into like a real business, I started working with a friend of mine. We worked together for a year, and then she had other passions and went in another direction. And in that year, her name also started with J.
Okay.
So in that year, we were sort of like, okay, what can this company be named? What are we going to make, and what are we going to do? And so, it became This Is J, and then ran with that. And, if I was starting a company now and it was going to be a pajama company, I would make the name pajama centric. But at the time, I wasn't sure what I was doing. It was mostly accessories. We were doing headbands. We had started to make scarves and hats, like toques.
Yeah.
And I went to art school for a year. So I went to OCAD when I came home, and I thought, okay, if I'm sort of doing this headband business on the side, I also want to go, because I really like the artistic side of it. I want to go and see if I can pursue that. And I did a year of that, and then was like, you know what? I think I'm more interested in the business part of it than the art. Like the art always came naturally to me, and I was more interested in the business part. So I sort of just dove in, and it became This Is J, and we started creating lots of different products and going to wholesale shows and selling to stores, and that was when the evolution really started.
I think one of the ethoses of your company, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, it's like sustainable goods made in Canada. Was that just out of, again, maybe the time? Because you're like, you'd go to the Yellow Pages, you'd find fabric or whatever it is, so it seemed obvious to make it in Canada? Mm-hmm. Or was this very intentional, and why didn't you at some point say, look, it makes more sense for me, maybe go overseas and get these products made? Mm-hmm. What was the thought process there?
I think when I first started, because I was making everything, of course, handmade in Canada. And then as I grew, it felt weird. I investigated, and at the time it was easiest to work with brokers because you couldn't just, Alibaba didn't exist. Mm-hmm. You couldn't just find a factory and know if they were reputable because you couldn't Google them. So you'd work with a broker, and, I met with a few brokers, and they did some pricing for me. I even did some samples, and I felt out of control. I was like, because I was a maker at my core, and I was designing and tweaking, and I'm so tactile, I really wanted to have that control. And that is really that's where we started and why we started in Canada. And then from there, we developed these relationships. And I really like, keeping everything local. And it doesn't have to be everything. Like, I don't preach everything has to be 100% sustainable. Everything has to be organic. Everything has to be made in Canada, because I don't think it's realistic to be 100% of anything. And, our ethos is really make the best decisions we can at the time. And you know what? Sometimes we want to dye a fabric one color and it's not working in the dye machine and we have to adjust and go for a different shade. And I've just learned over the years that you have to make the best decision that's available to you at the time. And it's not always going to be where you started, but if you are striving for perfection every single time, or you're holding yourself to a very specific vision, it's going to be very hard to get to the finish line.
That's a great point, because I struggle sometimes, with hypocrisy, because no one likes to be a hypocrite for the most part. And so, when you make a decision, you do feel very married to that decision. And sometimes, even when you have data and information that suggests that decision might not be right any longer, you kind of hold on to it because you don't want to be wrong. You don't want people to say, well, you used to say this and now look at you, you're a sellout, all these things. But to your point, as if you don't make these hard and fast rules, you're just kind of making decisions that make sense at that time. And I think that's really important for business. Businesses change. As businesses scale, they have different set of problems that that you can't necessarily, when you're small, you can make certain decisions that make sense. When you're big, you have to make different decisions. I'm curious in the design process, because I was watching some videos about you sort of at the shop, and you're touching the fabrics and you're designing, hand drawing the fabrics at time. Is that something that you're still really involved in? Is that one? I know you said your business is one of the favorite parts that you do, but that kind of hand drawn thing, you still love that?
The artistic part is still my favorite.
It came across in the videos. Yeah.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
It did.
Yeah.
I think sometimes I don't talk about it enough, because when you're running a business, you have to wear so many hats. And, you need to be an expert at Excel. You need to, be a people person to deal with your customers, and you need to oversee the manufacturing. So the artistic part no longer gets as much of my attention as it used to, but I am still the main designer. I still draw the majority of our designs unless we're collaborating with other people. And to me, that's just a passion. And I really look forward to that time. It's just hard to find. Do you do it
kind of on your own time? When you're at home, are you kind of oh, this would make a great design? I'm not creative in that regard at all.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to think, how would that process work? Where do you get inspiration from? Is it walking down the street, you take a photo of something, then you go home, draw it? I have no clue.
For me, it's always been based in vintage. I've always been very inspired by old things, by texture. So looking at this, and I'll see a pattern, even though this is knit and we're printing two-dimensional, I'll see a pattern in this, and it might be an inspiration to recreate that in a way that is two-dimensional. And also in travel, it's I find that, and it's hard when you have kids and you have a business to get as much travel in as maybe I used to when I was young. But anytime I feel stuck, it's if I can go have an experience outside of
your house,
the GTA. Sometimes it's as simple. Sometimes in the summer, I will drive an hour or 2 hours outside of the city and go to an outdoor flea market, just to experience something different. But for me, going to Europe is always just because there's so much old there. There's so much history.
Everything has a texture. The buildings have texture. The ground has texture, right?
Everything.
So you can get inspiration from anywhere. I like that. Maybe I should start walking around with a little bit more looking at the world from that lens. It's very unique. Mother, how many kids do you have?
I have 3 kids.
3 kids. How old are they?
5, 8, and 11.
Oh, and look at you, you got them all. You're what? Wait a second.
Yeah.
5, 8, and 11. How do you juggle all of that? I'm sure your time is cut thin.
Yeah. I think it's a constant learning how to balance. There's no such thing in my world of creating balance. And I think when I finally let go of trying to figure out how to put that balance in place, that was helpful. And instead I just, treat every week as a new, not a challenge, but a new calendar. So it's what do we have to get done this week? And my husband and I have a shared Google Calendar, which is our lifeline.
Yes.
It's the same way.
The calendar is so important. People really don't respect the calendar. A lot of I do training calls with other real estate agents. I was actually on one this morning, and I tell most people, like, talk to me about your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about how you calendar things. And they kind of look at me like, well, this isn't what I'm paying you for to talk to me about calendar. I'm like, no, this is exactly what you're paying me for, because you aren't using your calendar properly, correctly, because you wake up in the morning, if you don't know what you're doing, your time somehow gets filled. And not necessarily with the things that you want it to be filled with, right? So that's so important. Okay, so you and your husband, calendar, you got that down pat. Do you have set hours that you work for the most part? Is it?
No, I haven't figured that out. For me, my kids' schedules are set, but then things come up. Someone gets a fever, someone forgets their snow pants at school. Like, there's always something going on. And so my husband and I both work for ourselves. We're both entrepreneurs. Feel lucky to have that flexibility in our days, while knowing that means that work hours aren't set. And sometimes that becomes overwhelming, because, I always find towards the end of the year, I've lost that defining line between work and turning off. But at the same time, that's what allows me to be able to get everything I need to get done, and still have the flexibility to be there for everyone, including.
Do you feel, for the most part, you're like passionate about it, so it doesn't always feel like work? Is that, or some days you're like, no, this is work. This is a job.
Well, sometimes I see people being like, I just love what I do so much that it never feels like a day of work, and I'm like, that just can't be true. It can't be true. And I have moments, and I think especially now at the beginning of a new year, where I'm feeling energized and rested from that glorious week between Christmas and New Year's, where
knows what to do.
Everyone collectively leaves each other alone. Like, that to me is just a glorious week, where there's no emails coming in and no one's pushing anything forward, and I feel really rested after that week. So now I'm trying to take some time to figure out how I can be more present at home. And present at work. That's a goal of mine for this year, because it was very jumbled last year, just because of the needs of my kids and what was going on. And simple needs, like I said, I forgot my snow pants. Can you bring them? I have this after school activity.
The usual things that moms have to and dads have to deal with. Is your husband working with you, or he has his own business?
No, he jokes that, like, he's a full-time employee of This Is Jay, because he's very involved, and he's in tech, and so really so much tech stuff he has to help us out with. Gotcha. But no, he works for himself.
That's nice help to have.
It is.
Well, that's good. And sometimes, having a good division between couples is nice too, right? Work is work, and then come home. Pajamas. When did we decide to move into the pajama space, and why?
It was, accessories were fun and they were good, but it felt like, am I just going to have a company selling accessories? Like, what else would I want to make?
Is it because you felt like that was not big enough, or not sustainable enough, like in terms like business sustainability? It's
a good question. It wasn't so much about that. It was more about, as I was growing, I wanted to expand my product lines, and everything I've ever done is about function, and it serves a need and a purpose. So, a headband keeps your hair out of your face. The hats we were making keep your head warm, and they were reversible, so you were getting a 2-in-1.
I love a good 2-for-1.
Love a good 2-for-1. So, I've always been a pajama fan. Comfort for me is always number one. I was always the person that would walk through the door and change immediately.
Oh, I got to talk to you about this for a second.
Are you this person too?
My poor husband, God bless his soul, because when I get home, like I like getting dressed up for work. I like, getting a nice outfit on. I like being at the office and feeling like dressed up.
Yeah.
And the world's gotten more casual, so now I've had to start, making my wardrobe a little bit more casual. But I always loved, like, when I was a kid, I was like, I can't wait to work so that I can wear suits and stilettos and all these things. And now, like, my feet, like, these are sitting shoes now. You know what I mean? But when I get home, literally, it's like, hi, hubby, walk into my closet. Hair comes out, makeup comes off, PJs go on. He probably gets to see me for 13 seconds, it looking.
But how good does that feel? Like, so that good feeling, that
it's beyond
moment is just so good.
I love it. And so I put PJs on at, like, if I'm home at 6 o'clock in the summer, it's still sunny out, I'm wearing my PJs.
So then you understand, because that is the feeling that we strive to replicate with our pajamas. Is just that feeling of like extreme comfort as you change out of your high heels and your, tightly fitted pants into just like the most comfortable pajamas, and you breathe that sigh of relief.
Yeah, what I like about, because I was looking at your clothes on your site, is a lot of them are very like, yes, of course they're pajamas, but they seem appropriate. Like if people were over at your house, you know how oftentimes, like if you ever have people staying over, you feel like when you wake up, you got to put your clothes on because your pajamas are your pajamas. Like these are like, you can relax in them. If you really needed to even run to the convenience store, you could get away with it. So I like that, right? Like they're almost just loungewear.
Well, our tagline has always been pajamas for more than just the bedroom.
Oh, great.
And it is. It's like, I love when I drop my kids off at school in the morning, you see different parents in the schoolyard wearing This Is Jay pajama pants and always wearing our toques. And it makes me smile. Like, I get it. I live in this stuff too. And that's what it's for, really.
You must have had the ability to take advantage of COVID, because I feel like that's when everyone was home, and was that like a great opportunity for you guys? Again, not because you're people were sick, and I understand that, but was that an interesting phase for the company?
It was very interesting, because prior to COVID, we were probably only 25% e-commerce. So we were doing wholesale shows, we were selling to stores, and we were doing direct to consumer at shows like the One of a Kind show in Toronto. But we were doing shows like that across North America. Like we would do a 40-day retail show in Grand Central Station in New York at Christmas time. And then we would do these.
Christmas, that makes sense.
Yeah, always at Christmas.
PJs for Christmas, yes.
Exactly. And between October and Christmas, we would do 15 shows back to back. We were total carnies. Like, pack up a crate, get to a new city, set up a booth, unload your product, sell for 3 days, and do it all again.
Oh my gosh.
And some of my best friends in the world, like, are people that I met 15, 20 years ago on this carny circuit, and we just were like, what are we doing? Look at this life. It's so crazy. And, all of our businesses have grown exponentially, but we met in this carny land.
I'm smiling because, when you're in it, obviously it's exhausting, and you probably just want to like sleep in your own bed and take a proper shower and all those things.
Yeah.
But all those hard times that aren't always fun in the moment are like the times that you look back with like the greatest pride.
It's true. It's true, because we were accomplishing a lot. And then as years went on and, the business grew and our sales grew, it became, we knew how to do it. So one, you stayed at nicer hotels, so you were happy at the end of the day to go back. When we first started, it was sharing rooms, staying in the cheapest hotels, and then it became, okay, well, we're doing really well, so let's add more shows, and maybe let's stay in nicer hotels so that it feels like a reward at the end of the long day. And that really went on until COVID. And so we were set up for e-commerce. We were selling online. Our pajamas did really well, but we were really manufacturing for wholesale. And what we were selling online was what we had left over. We weren't inventory planning for online. Okay. And we kept saying, at what point do we want to put in place a strategy that will give a much bigger budget to expanding our e-commerce? And we thought, okay, let's create a 5-year plan, because all of our money was really put into wholesale shows and these direct-to-consumer shows. So we didn't really have a budget set aside for e-commerce, besides like the little bit that we were doing. And when COVID hit, we had to take that 5-year plan and implement it in 5 weeks. Yeah.
That was all hands on deck.
It was all hands on deck, but it really goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, where I'm like, I'm just an ideas person and a creative person, and I like a challenge to make something and build it. So at the time, it obviously felt devastating, because no one had any idea what was going on, and we were all so scared. But the interesting thing that happened is all of our shows and all of our orders got canceled in 24 hours. Oh. It was crazy.
Like on the 15th or 16th or whatever it was? Yeah.
It was exactly it. It was just a day of emails being like, every show is canceled, every order is canceled. And so...
Oh my gosh, you must have been scared shitless. Like, what are we going to do?
I have this thing, I've always had it, where when something is in my control, it causes me anxiety and keeps me up at night because I have to figure out the solution. When something is outside of my control, I'm eerily calm because I have figured out every scenario and I realize it's out of my control. So at that time, it was like, I sat down, I'm like, what are our expenses? How much inventory are we sitting on right now? How long will we be okay if I don't make another dollar? How long will we be okay for? And how can I take care of my people? And make sure my people are safe and they need money for their families. And those were my three main things. And I worked through that, and I'm like, okay, we're going to be okay for a while. So, and we have e-commerce, but I didn't know that around that
wasn't
time.
a huge part of your business.
It wasn't, but I still had a revenue stream. Even at that point, like, we didn't know if things were going to ship or not, and we were waiting to hear. And we had our staff at a 3PL who was packing and shipping for us in Mississauga, or at the time it was Brampton. And so they didn't even know if they were deemed essential at the time. And so about a week in, they were deemed essential. So we knew we didn't have to shut down our shipping. And I had a lot of stock because all of my shows had been canceled. All of my orders had been canceled. So I was like, okay, is anyone going to buy this? Because around the 15th, 16th, our online sales went to zero because all people were concerned with was getting toilet paper.
Yes.
Right? We were all in that same boat. And so
it's just funny to go back, right? Like, it's weird how scary that whole situation was. But oddly, people got out of it pretty quickly. And then it was back to buying things online.
It feels quick when you look back on it, but at that time, like, every day felt like an eternity. It was like, and my husband, who's in tech, it's every one of his clients needed to set up a home office. Like, it wasn't a thing before that. And so he was literally locked in a room 24 hours a day, just getting his clients set up and making sure they knew, like, what Zoom was. Like, not everyone was using Zoom prior to that. So it was this really interesting time. And we usually do a sample sale in April, beginning of April and beginning of December. And I thought, okay, you know what? We'll do the sample sale. I'll put some product into it that normally wouldn't go in, because we're sitting on all this product. Maybe I'll be able to recoup a little bit of money. It'll float us another month or two. And I stayed up for like 2 full nights programming because, everyone was busy. I couldn't put pressure on my team. They were trying to get toilet paper and make sure their kids were okay. And so, I have a graphic design background. I know how to program a little bit. And I was just, editing pictures, putting stuff up that wouldn't have normally been up online. And I got everything done, and at 9 a.m. the sale launched, and we sold it in an hour. And in that moment,
how did you make people aware to it?
We have a huge email list. So when you were talking about like CRM, all these things, the one thing that I realized I did right is from the get-go, even before email marketing was a thing, we used to get people to sign up by hand at shows. So even if we only got 50 people signing up per show, and we were doing 30 shows a year, it just kept adding up and adding up and adding up. And when we finally got more serious about, automating our e-commerce, which was probably, 9 years ago, when we started to do that, we already had like a few thousand people on our list.
That's fantastic.
And then, as we started, getting more into pop-ups, welcome to the site, we'll give you a discount if you sign up. We just have a huge customer retention rate and a huge sign up for our email list. So we have like over 100,000 people on our email list. And
that got you through it. And there you go, in an hour. And then things just started going from there. Has e-commerce taken over now as your main sort of, wow.
It was this moment where first of all, I was sleep deprived and exhausted and like trying to get my kids onto Zoom. And I look, my director of operations, she called me and she's like, are you looking at the numbers? And I'm like, what? She's like, it is insane. And I looked and I was like, oh my God, like, we're sold out. And in that moment, I realized everyone is at home. Everyone is like, just wants some comfort. And this is our time. And I started to reach out to, anyone on my team. We have someone who helps us with paid advertising. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get a budget going. I reached out to every show that had been canceled. I said, we're going to pull our deposit rather than waiting to see if the shows come back. We're going to pull our deposits. Because now we're like 2 weeks in, and now they were saying, okay, the show's now canceled this year, or canceled for 6 months.
Yes.
You can either get your money back or just carry your deposit forward. So I took all my deposits back, and we took all of that and we put it into advertising, which we already had the ads in market. And I think that's a big difference. And I feel very thankful for that. A lot of people had to start from scratch.
Right. And they're learning this on the fly, right? Like, like you said, some people didn't even know how to use Zoom. So anything that you weren't using previously is, the learning curve, and you had the ability to like pivot very quickly because of all these. It's funny how all these steps along the way, right? Like we don't even know why we're gathering emails, but we should gather emails. Like just, it sounds like you made a lot of good decisions along the way, which brings me to my next question. If you don't mind sharing, what would you say maybe is the biggest, worst decision that you've made? And I say worst, like thing that you've maybe learned from, not necessarily a full-on failure, but something that you're like, that wasn't my best choice.
It's an interesting question. My whole outlook on business has always been, try anything and everything as long as it doesn't bankrupt you. So I am calculated in the things that I do. I've had upsets, I have flown to New York or LA for these big meetings and had the meeting canceled an hour before. And you're standing there and you're like, do they understand what went into this for me to get here? And at the time, it's pretty devastating. But then sometimes it really is just something's going on their end. And then 4 months later, you get a massive order, or you don't, and 6 months later, a competitor comes to you and you develop an amazing relationship. So the one thing I've learned is every upset is a learning experience. And it might not feel like it at the time. It might feel like heartache.
It never does, yes.
It never does. Yeah. But you need to be able to pick yourself up. That's entrepreneurship. You need to be able to pick yourself up, keep putting one foot in front of the other, trying different things. And then once you have a little bit of space between you and whatever happened, trying to figure out what you learned from it.
Yeah. Anything around scaling, because I know sometimes people who are watching and listening, they have these small ideas. I have a lot of friends actually who, when they became moms, they started getting a little bit of time. Maybe their kids went off to school and they have a little bit more time at home, and they have these great ideas, and they can sell a couple things here and there. What's maybe your advice to those people? Like to get it kind of outside of selling it to your neighbor and your friend and the couple hundred people that you know online. What's the first step that person should take? Should it be hiring somebody? Should it be like, where would you go with that? I don't know.
I would say start hyper local. It's, if you have the ability to, starting a website is a great way to do it. But like you said, just because you start a website doesn't mean anyone's going to find you. So it takes time. I personally feel our longevity and growth is because we never had all of our eggs in one basket. I watched so many people go out of business at different points and different recessions because they had all their eggs in one basket. And
when you mean that, you mean product line, eggs in one basket? Like
it could mean that.
Okay.
It could mean that they were only selling wholesale in the U.S. and the U.S. economy fell and all of their stores went out of business and they were selling to 1,000 stores, and now people are only placing $50 orders and they can't sustain their business, which is why I was always diversified in e-commerce, direct-to-consumer at shows, and wholesale. And even now that we became so focused on e-commerce during the pandemic, we're starting to focus a little bit more back on, servicing our wholesale customers. And we still do the one-of-a-kind show. We love that one. We've given up the other 15.
You're never giving up one of a kind.
But we're never giving up one of a kind. But I think it's, you want to test it out. You want to test your product out. You want to learn on the fly. And so if you can do local shows where you can get people's reactions, if you go do a show and you make 0 sales, that doesn't matter. How did people react to your product? That matters.
And that feedback's important because maybe there is something very small tweak to your product that, we often so much time, like when we get feedback, we take it so negatively, right? And I don't know if, or at least I do, like from childhood when people would say, can I give you feedback? It's like, oh God, I want the feedback to be, it was perfect, it was wonderful. But that feedback tells you a lot. Yeah. And your clients and potential clients, they'll give you the feedback one way or another, whether it's, they're not buying, that's feedback, something's wrong. But then that could be a plethora of things. But even just having the ability to ask people, like,
for sure,
what would you like? What would you prefer to see? Talking with your clients, maybe if you are developing a product like pajamas or headbands, like working with people, even the models that you're using, like how does this feel? Getting all that feedback, that all gives you quite a story to be able to pivot. Question for you as we wrap up. This is Jay, is the name of your company. If you could define yourself maybe using 2 words, who is Jaimie? And if you need more than 2, that's okay.
Define myself using 2 words. I think I'm creative at my core, very creative, very crafty. That's who I am. And I think that I'm a doer.
Ooh.
I'm a doer. I like to get my hands dirty. I like to have an idea and I like to run with it. And I am an ideas person. And my team laughs. We were I think 4 of us were on a call yesterday, and I was just spewing out ideas. And they were just laughing because they're like, okay, calm down now.
Well, you're the real visionary, right? But what's so interesting with what you said there is there's 2 very important components. Mm-hmm. A lot of people have good ideas.
Yeah.
A lot of people can't do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people who are like, tell me what to do, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't make me come up with the ideas. I'm not the big thinker.
You're right.
And you actually have the double threat, we'll call it,
Mm-hmm.
because you have the ability to do both.
But I think that it's a blessing and a curse because I need to learn how to ask for help. I need to learn how to delegate. Those are my challenges personally. I tend to say, okay, this is what I want to do. And if not everyone fully grasps my vision, I'm just like, I'm going to do it myself. And my team, who, I love collecting good people. I have an amazing team. I've been working with everyone for so long, and we have very close relationships. And, we're close enough for them to say to me, you need to step back here. You don't need to touch this. Let us run with it, and we'll bring it to you to vet once we're done.
That's so hard.
Yeah.
Because when you're the person who started the company,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been obviously working at it longer than anyone else, it's like your 4th child in a way. It really is. And to give away and to delegate and to let other people make decisions that might be wrong or that you even disagree with, I'm sure at times.
Yeah.
That's hard for a lot of people. Has that been maybe the hardest thing for you?
I love when my team challenges me and they're right. Nothing makes me happier than when someone can sort of say, we see what you want to do, but it's not the right idea. Because I have so many ideas that I need people to bring me back to reality and be like, this one has legs, this one is off. But that's why you need to surround yourself with good people and people who are just as invested in what you're doing as you are. That's a whole other hour-long conversation in terms of people and working with
we
people,
could have gone so many different ways with this. And when you came in, the first thing that you said to me off camera was you were talking about your team. And obviously there's a lot of love there. And it's so true. The team really, really makes it all. And so we could have gone down that route. Sorry, team. We didn't go down there. Maybe the next one, episode 2.
Yeah.
What's next? What's next for This Is Jay? What do you envision for the future?
I want to incorporate more of our creativity in a way that people can see. What I realized, especially this year at the One of a Kind show, which is my time to talk directly to our customers, and I'm not even so much looking for feedback on the products. I'm looking to hear how they're interacting with our marketing. Are they getting our message? Or do they just think, oh, we love these because they're comfy pajamas? Do they understand they're made in Canada? Do they understand that we design and print the fabric? And I think that's a story we could tell better. And that's something I really want to work on, is being able to, bring our creativity to people in a way where they get to experience it the same way we do.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love learning about new businesses and ventures that I have nothing to do with. I mean, I worked in the buying department at Holt Renfrew for a little bit there. So I like fashion, but I'm definitely not on the creative side. So I appreciate all the things that you've taught me today. And what I really hope the audience takes home with this is we have so many talented people here in Toronto.
Yeah.
There's so much incredible things going on, and there's so many powerful women like yourself who are doing such amazing things. And, the best way that we can do to support these women is buying the product, you know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Or being on the email list, getting your hands dirty a little bit and finding out who's doing what here in the city. It's really incredible. So I thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Before we wrap up, any last minute advice or tidbit or thing that you'd like to share with the community, maybe how they can best help support you, anything you'd like to share? I
think it's really just, if you are a comfort lover like we are, just try out our pajamas. I think they're life-changing, and our 75% customer retention rate, I think, also proves that once you try them, you will never want to put anything else on.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I'm going to have to pick myself up a pair.
I'm sure
too.
we can get you a pair of pajamas.
I have to, because I live in my PJs. And you know what? I should have actually told you to come. We should have just dressed in our PJs today.
Next time.
If you knew that we were on the couch in the new set and everything, it would have worked out really well. But thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And guys, we'll see you next time.